During a 3-year hiatus from music, Tebe, aka Earl, lost his father, with whom he had a very broken relationship with, and this event actually caused him to suffer greatly, but also allowed him to find new peace in his life. While some rap songs may appear to be Earl's most depressing piece, yet the album is truly a testament to progress and self-betterment. On Shattered Dreams, Earl references his suicidal thoughts and drug use in the song's chorus, describing how he's trapped in a cycle of drugs and depression, which he compares to a dream. Earl has been pulled out of his dream, likely due to the death of his late father. People weren't able to see his rising depression that caused him to cancel his tour in mid-2018. Red Water is the first track on the record that makes a specific reference to Earl's father. He loops a continuous 8-bar scheme here, saying that while he may be a king, he's trapped under the pressures of depression. The track shows fragmented memories of Earl's father, such as his nickname for Earl, Chief, and how he also ties into Earl's depression. With a lack of closure, his thoughts repeat in his head as he cycles through the confusion. Cold Summers shows a contrast between the normally warm, joyful summers experienced by others and the dark, depressive ones braved by Earl. Despite these reckless actions, he enjoys his life and only returns home out of a bind to his family, treating his impending death as a joke. He references his gold noose chain, showing that with fame, it may appear to be glamorous and fun, but it can also lead to a path of death and pain. Now, Earl jumps forward to a point where he views those struggling around him not as friends but as warnings of what he could be. His response to bad times was to isolate himself from people, viewing their expectations as the cause of his anxiety. Now Earl isn't a slave to his followers and turns to God when he's feeling low, instead of trying to isolate himself. On his current journey, Earl has seen the flaws in his old friends and their reckless behaviour, and he decided to surround himself with those who truly care about him. From these friends, Earl learned important lessons about morality and found an escape from his own reality. And while Earl struggled as a youth, clashing with his parents, following reckless friends and falling into drug use, he was provided with true knowledge by some who actually cared about him. On this track, with the help of experimental jazz band and hip-hop group Standing on the Corner, Earl details his struggles through depression and his fear of the future. Keep that in mind, his fear of the future. Earl now sees where his choices have led him and begs his mother for help, a representation of his panicked attempts to find dependable people to latch onto as times of true struggle come about. The Mint opens with a short sample from the film Black Dynamite, specifically from a character named Cream Corn who acts like he's running things, but is actually easily intimidated and powerless. This ties into the track which follows, where Earl and featured guest Navy Blue drop verses about their lack of control in their lives and how they can sometimes feel powerless in the course of life. This is a great example of progress at a cost. Wherever Earl or Navy attempt to break free from their depression, realizations about their lives can plunge them right back in. So it's important for them to stay strong through their struggles. Earl is making a pivot from suppressing his issues to making some real progress. Earl also wishes to help his friends in other ways, saying that despite his issues with his father, he still urges his friends to spend more time with their families, since they never know how much time they'll have. He's also quite proud of his friends, seeing them make their way up from having little success. While Earl is still struggling with the loss of his dad and depression, he's able to appreciate the success of his friends, keeping positives in his life. Lucy focuses on one specific friend who Earl is no longer tied to. This friend appeared to be a true friend in some aspects to Earl, but was actually working against him, behind his back, plotting on his downfall. Earl references a 1973 film called Harder They Come, where an aspiring artist is cheated out of his money and must resort to a life of crime. The film's protagonist highlights the weakness of the character Lucy. The message of the song gives the title a double meaning, with a Lucy being a single loose cigarette, showing how the track's subject quickly used Earl and his friends before throwing them out, and also how Earl has no problem with quickly using his friend's story for this track and self-betterment before casting them aside as well. Azucar translates in English to sugar, and sugar is used on the track to represent everything from depression to drugs to hope for the future. However, regardless of the context in which it's being used, it's apparent that Earl's Azucar is something that he can't live without, causing both pain and eventually salvation for him. Earl lives like it's his last day on Earth, not because it might be, but because he now knows the value of life and wants to accomplish as much as he can before he goes. After reflecting on his journey through Asuka, Earl has decided to take some time out of the spotlight to better himself. He compares this to an eclipse to show that while he may appear absent to many of his fans, he's only hiding the shine he's been forced to suppress due to his depression. This determination to better himself is presented in the chorus, where Earl compares his commitment to a hustler's commitment to getting cash. Earl draws a comparison with those ready to destroy his fame to Christopher Columbus's actions against the Native Americans. If Earl has to fight his oppression, he'll avoid the mistakes of the natives and steer clear of the sunny beach, collecting his power in the dark until he's ready to fight on his own terms. Earl says, "Peace to every crease on your brain," and this line serves two separate meanings. On one hand, Earl is literally calling for peace throughout the whole mind, wishing that those dealing with issues like himself can find peace. But the line also shows how Earl has learned to celebrate every crease in his brain. While he may have issues with his mental health, Earl has learned to accept them and accept himself. Earl references his mother here in two different ways. He says, "When it's time to put my burnt body in a case, tell my mom I said thank you." One interpretation is that Earl's saying is that if he goes too far and falls victim to his vice, he wants to thank his mother for at least trying to help him escape it for a bit. And another idea is that Earl is somewhat blaming his mother for his fall into vice and struggle. Earl's relationship with his mother has always been a tense one, and it's clear that his parents provide a large source of issues for him. However, these are issues he's ready to take on, ending his verse by saying he's listing these strains to vent and make progress forward, and he'll continue to stay out of the spotlight until he feels like he's worked through his problems. This audio collage serves as a representation of Earl's familial struggles, the start of playing possum, and it avoids any real definite interpretation, but the subject matter of both Earl's father and mother hints at a deeper meaning. Earl's father recites a poem about refugee children atop Earl's mother's audio, referencing the displacement caused to Earl by his father. Earl's dad caused Earl's home to be a broken place, and this was something that contributed to Earl's depression and resentment of his father. Now, despite these dark interpretations, the track has a tragic underlying theme, showing what Earl wanted more than anything else, a conversation between his parents. Earl's issues come from both his mother and his father, but more than anything from their separation. This makes the song a melancholic exploration of Earl's issues with family, something this track is helping him work through. Earl begins Peanut by referencing his late father, saying he's on the way to South Africa, showing both his aspirations to be a poet like his father and his fear that he'll follow his dad into the grave. He then brings up a situation where his family isn't impressed by his music, showing his fear of failing those around him. His self-doubt on Peanut makes him feel like his depression isn't a phase and will follow him forever. On top of all this, the passing of Earl's father is halting any progression forwards that he may have desired, pushing him towards depression. Earl now distances and isolates himself from others even more than before, and with the increased pain of losing his father's longtime friend and only weeks later, it seems like Earl couldn't handle real confrontation with his issues and is slipping back into darkness. The last track is an instrumental track which samples the previously mentioned Uncle Hugh and serves as a way of preserving his memory. As Earl showed on Veins, something that helps to give his own life a greater purpose is preserving the legacy of others, and that's what he does here. While the previous track may have seemed like the end for Earl, a tragic acceptance of defeat due to the loss of two important figures in his life helps him make a minor recovery here, showing that he's not willing to isolate himself and let the legacy of those he loves die out. Riot is a celebration of life, whether it be the life and legacy of Earl's Uncle Hugh or the life of Earl himself, who was able to regain his own control. It's an optimistic look into the future for Earl, who after pushing through the pains of depression, drug use and loss, is making change for the better one moment at a time.